Good morning and good morrow to thee, my loyal subjects. My name is Maya the King, and today we're taking a look at a game that came out earlier this morning on Steam called Werewolf: The Apocalypse Earthblood. Developed by Cyanide Studio and published by Nacon, the game is described on Steam as follows. You are Kahal, a powerful Garu who chose to go into exile after losing control of his destructive rage. He can transform into a wolf and a Krynos, a huge ferocious beast. Master your three forms and their powers to punish those who defile Gaia. So, this game is an action-adventure stealth-style game. You play as Kahal, some random guy who's a werewolf, as he sneaks around into an evil corporation's underbelly until he finds what he looks for, a reason to go berserk. And then you turn into a werewolf and slaughter all the guards in a God of War style of gameplay. Rinse, repeat. So, I played this game for over an hour, and I'm ready to give you all my opinion. Also, please note that this game is not in early access and is currently selling on Steam for $30. It's 30 American dollars at least. Now then, as always, let's go into the good and the bad, and up first is the good. Number one, for the positives, the graphics, or at least partially the graphics. The opening cutscene looked amazing. The design and the style of the art, plus the contrasting colors, it was just beautiful. It really sucked me in. The design and attention to detail on the werewolves in particular looks really good too. But this will also end up in a negative, and you'll find out why later. But for now, though, the game's opening cutscene looked, pretty good, and the environments looked pretty good. So did the werewolf parts of playing this game and your enemies. Number two, the sound effects and music. The music itself is super, there's no other way to say it. It's badass, and it's intense. It really sets the mood for every situation. The game has lovely sound effects to let you know when you gain a level, find something new, or whatever. And during the combat, the guns sounded like guns, and the werewolf sounded like you'd expect it to sound. So overall, I had no complaints on the music or the sound, which was nice. Number three, the game's overall idea and creativity. It creates its own lore and creates a realistic place for werewolves in this world. Plus, come on, how many werewolf games are there? Not many. But how many vampire games are there? Well, also not many, but more than werewolves. So it's really nice to finally get a game like this, especially since I myself am a werewolf guy, not a vampire guy. So I really like that. Number four, the gameplay seems pretty legit when you're fighting. It's a little clunky at times, but overall, when I was tearing through my enemies, I felt like a werewolf. The gameplay style is very similar to God of War or Darksiders or whatever, whenever you're playing as the werewolf and actually fighting. It has execution commands, different skills, different types of enemies that require you to change up your particular style of fighting. Like, it offers you an agile mode or a heavy mode to deal with different enemies based on, what they are and what you need to do to get them. These different modes come with obviously different skills and attacks, so you're going to have to switch it up and be smart as you're playing, or else you're never going to be able to get through the enemies. Number five. The game had a pretty decent tutorial, and I always give this either a pro or a con point because of how relevant it has become in my videos. The game gave me a simple, easy-to-understand tutorial while I was playing through the story, so it fit it perfectly. This is how tutorials should be done. Lets you play the game and experience the story while also teaching you, but without blinding you or overwhelming you with needless information. It just teaches you what you need to know at the time, lets you learn how to use it, and then moves on to the next point. So yeah, good tutorial. But that's all I got for the positives, everyone. Now we're going to go up to the negatives. And just a friendly reminder while you're watching this video, if you find it entertaining or informative, I would greatly appreciate you guys and girls out there showing me and my channel some support. How can you do that? Well, it's easy, and it only takes a few seconds of your time. Hit the subscribe button, share the video, hit the like button, or leave me a comment. Alright? It might not seem like much, but it really does help. Thank you. Now then, on to the negatives. The first negatives that struck out to me was the voice acting. At first, though, I thought it was fine. I was like, whatever. They were monotone and gruff and rough around the edges, but I was like, hey, they're werewolves, so this kind of makes sense. But then it came down to like a really dramatic scene or some action scenes later on that would require the actors to, actually put in some passion and effort, and they just didn't. Can you imagine gunfire with fire around you and death all around you as your friends and family are dying, and instead of, showing some kind of emotion, you're still just using that same monotone voice without actually giving a crap? Like, that was pretty much all the voice acting in this game. It was just so distracting. It was so distracting. I'm sorry I couldn't show you guys in this video as part of my recording because it didn't record very well and I can't use it, which is also why this video isn't going to have a lot of the combat in it. Super sorry about that. But, during a very dramatic scene where literally anyone would be screaming or crying or shouting in pain, the guy just sounds like a dull dud. And it never really got any better the longer I played either. This dude has a gash in his side, and he just watched his people die. Maybe show a little emotion, dude. They just always sound so dull and passionless. If they don't show any passion or care, why should I? Number 2. The controls are a bit fidgety, and by that I mean, at one point I'm turning my mouse just to look behind me, but my camera does a full 360 spin for no reason, and I'm confused and disoriented. This happened to me several times in key moments where it was really distracting and it could have hurt me. Plus, it just feels weird when you're fighting enemies and how your werewolf form just kinda zips around, not really following my directions all that well. Plus, sometimes when I tried to do a silent takedown in my human form, the button just didn't work. So I found myself having to mash the left click button from then on just to make sure that it would actually work and he would actually use the takedown. It made the game annoying because I never knew when one of these glitches was going to happen and screw me up, so those need some work. Number 3, the character models in their little dialogue scenes are subpar. They look very stiff, they barely move at all, the lip syncing is also pretty bad. It was just like I was playing a game from 10 or 15 years ago. Stiff, clunky, and just awkward. Number 4, I found myself bored actually, and not really caring about the story. I found zero motivation to want to keep going. I was counting down the minutes until I could stop playing. If the game was planning on drawing me into its story and immerse me into its world or gameplay, then it failed epically. I actually found myself bored. I was bored playing a werewolf. The action parts were a little fun, but everything else was just bland and boring. The story is generic, it's just another revenge plot with no originality. I mean, the idea of this game is good, but the story they went with and following it was just really boring in my own personal opinion. Number 5. I mentioned earlier that the graphics would also be in the negatives, but it's only a minor part. It's the character models. I already breached these, earlier. In between the action segments, they just look really badly done. And not only that, but when you get a close-up on some characters in some cutscenes, you can see a real lack of attention to detail. There was this one scene with this lady in like a mech warrior suit that she was using to fight the werewolves, and it was a cutscene. And it was so blurry, it was so rough, it was so just glitched out, that it was like I was once again looking at a game from 15 years ago. So it's really weird how at one point the game will look really good, and then at another point, a few minutes later, it looks really, really bad. Like the consistency, maybe that's how I should put it. It's the consistency in the graphics is just really bad, and it gets really distracting. So those are the only main points that I care to mention about in my negative sections. Overall, well, the game is fun at parts, and it's boring at parts. You see, each mission is pretty much the same. You sneak around until you get to a certain part, and then you turn into a werewolf and shred your way out. And sometimes the game will give you the option of staying a werewolf and just keep ripping through your enemies, or you can go back to sneaking out. The sneaking around part is well designed, but it's a bit slow and lackluster. You get a crossbow for long-range stealth kills, and you get, a takedown that you can only use when you're behind an enemy. And it's pretty much just the same formula over and over again. But tell me, what is the point of sneaking around if you're just going to blow your cover and go werewolf and tread your way out anyway? It doesn't really make any sense. It's almost like you're sneaking around for no reason. Like all that work you put into sneaking around without getting caught was for nothing. Oh, and if you happen to get caught while sneaking, you don't get to go werewolf and fight. No, it's game over. If you get caught while sneaking, it's game over. Start over. You don't get to turn into a werewolf and shred your way out. No, the game wants you to sneak to a point, and then you can turn werewolf. And that's just kind of lame. Let us have the choice at least. Overall, I think it was just a really bad design call for a game like this. If you wanted to give us the option of being sneaky or being loud, then actually give us that option. Don't restrict us for half the level, only to give us what we really wanted, a werewolf shredding around through bad guys. I mean, overall, for me, this is a judgment call. And it's for a judgment call for you guys, too. If you found yourself looking at this gameplay and you're thinking to yourself after hearing this video, well, it still looks like fun, then you know what? Sure, give it a go. But just keep in mind that there's a lot more sneaking than there is werewolf shredding. At least for the first 2 hours that I played. I myself quickly found myself bored and uninterested in continuing. Even the werewolf points, while fun at times, were also kind of a bit boring and lackluster at times because you're just doing the same thing over and over again and the enemies just die super easy. I was playing on normal, and it was still super easy. I mean, sure, a rare enemy will pop up and force you to adjust to him or her, but it takes a few seconds and then you're right back to just randomly shredding through mindless drones again. But if you want to know what it's like to be a werewolf in a war with an evil corporation and you don't mind a pretty decent sneaking mechanics and bad voice acting taking up most of your time, then hell, I recommend this game. But if you were looking something with a faster pace, a lot more action, destruction, and gore, and werewolf shredding, then maybe this isn't for you. But then again, it's probably the only werewolf game out there where you get to play as a werewolf like this, and I'll say, at least it gives you that. It may be the only game of its kind out there like this, And that alone might be a reason for you to give it some consideration. Even if it's not the best, it's better than some other games out there that I've tried, and in this one, at least you actually get to play as a werewolf, and you actually get to go around and rip the heads off bad guys. You know? So it's up to you guys out there. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and that's all I got. So thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.